Now that we've wrapped up this section, we'd like to bring in an industry expert to weigh in on these topics. Please welcome Bob Niemi. Bob is with the law firm of Baker Hostetler and specializes in helping clients navigate today's dynamic lending environment. His background's very unique, and you'll see why he's a perfect person to weigh in on these topics. Bob not only worked in the industry, but he also ran a state mortgage banking association, and after that became the #2 regulator in the state of Ohio, serving Ohio as deputy superintendent. While in that role, he was a member of and participated in both ARMOR and NMLS. With NMLS, he served as the ombudsman, and with ARMOR, he was involved in the training of state mortgage examiners. So we want to welcome Bob today, and as we do, we have to ask, is it good to be back on the business side?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, it's very good to be back on the business side of this profession, helping lenders navigate the complex world of state licensing and regulatory issues, NMLS situations, state to state to state. So it's been a lot of fun coming back.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Now, when it comes to exams and common issues that regulators take action on, there were 4 that we talked about in this course. There was advertising, complaints, disclosures, and also unlicensed activity. Let's walk through these one at a time, and we'd value your opinion on these and what licensees really need to pay close attention to.
Well, they need to pay attention to a little bit of everything because, yes, while the CFPB is setting the federal rules and regulations and putting out the standards for every state to follow, it will be the individual states that do, 90-some% of the examinations that are conducted every year. You mentioned the 20-some number. In 2016, CFPB had set out a goal to do about 25 origination examinations, while the states, when you combine them all together, it will be over 2,000 exams when it comes to the end of this year. So it is paying attention to both the state laws and the state regulations, but also understanding where the federal oversight is with CFPB.
With advertising, we know that it needs to be retained and it has to follow the advertising rules that appear in TILA and the MAP rule, etc. But as it relates to advertising, what do you think the real key here is?
With advertising of any site, any type, you need to pause. Pause before you post. Certainly experience, and when my time with the state of Ohio, we saw it a lot, originators on social media, Instagram, Facebook, posting something, putting out their information about rates and terms, and not including all the required disclosures. And that piece of advertising, whether it be an email, whether it be a flyer, whether it be a post on Instagram or Facebook, it can rise to the level of an advertisement depending on what you include. And that triggers, like you said, the TILA, all those other laws come into effect, plus the retention, and that's a minimum of 3 years. So certainly work with your company, find out what your company policy is about what you are allowed to do on social media with flyers, what you do need to get those approved, and how to make sure that you're providing that information for what you do once approved to your company so they can track it and retain it for future examinations.
When it comes to complaints, we know that complaints can be triggers for an exam, and also the licensee's goal is to proactively prevent complaints. But what's an examiner looking for with how a licensee, whether a mortgage loan originator or a branch manager or a company, what do they look at as it relates to how those parties handle complaints?
Well, certainly an examiner or a state, when they look at companies for what they're going to examine, they're going to use complaints as part of the risk profiling to see what companies they're going to see next. Certainly a single complaint, when it's rising to a level that may do it, may trigger an exam on its own. It's happened in many states. But they are looking at it. And you mentioned walking through the process. The originator, the sales manager, I know and everybody understands that customer service is key and they're going to try and take care of that individual customer. But need to understand, as an originator, you cannot control that process the whole way through. Customers will be upset. You can't control appraisals. You can't control the real estate transaction. You can't control all the other entities. And the consumer may not be happy the whole way through. But in your goal of trying to take care of that consumer, and you're trying to make sure that the situation is handled for them, to make sure you're following, again, company policy. If you're tracking customer complaints, is there a form, is there a system out there? Because at the loan officer level, at the sales manager level, at the branch level, at the company level, that information is tracked and retained, because if it gets moved on to a state or to CFPB in their complaint database, that's going to impact exams and how a company is looking at their complaints and how they are solving that issue, not just for the individual consumer, but is it a show? Is it a tell that there's a problem? Is there something else they should be doing systemic, either with an individual or a system or a process or their policy that they need to do to correct this and make it better for all consumers and not just that individual one at a time? What that complaint says about the process. Does it tell the company they have something else that they need to do, because is the same issue happening for a customer after customer after customer? And that's when it rises to the level that the company needs to look internally.
Understood and appreciate those points. Now let's talk a little bit about disclosures. With disclosures, what do licensees need to know about what regulators are looking for when examining disclosures?
Well, certainly disclosures, timely and accurate disclosures are certainly key to any process. But understanding that as you move from state to state to state, again, the laws are going to vary a little bit, and most states have a specific form they require when you're doing it. So making sure you have the most up-to-date form that is required for that state, that you are providing accurate information, timely information within the required timeframes, that it's documented, the customer receipt, and that you are charging the fees that are allowable by state or by locality where you're at making that loan. And making sure that you are handling it in the best way, not charging fees that are, overcharging numbers or unallowable fees, and making sure that you're staying within the guidelines for where you're licensed.
All right, finally, with unlicensed activity, what are the keys to avoiding these types of issues?
Unlicensed activity is a challenge, and I understand that originators at the beginning of the process, they want to get out there, they want to start acting as an originator, they're doing advertisements or doing pre-quals, but you got to wait. You need to wait until you get the licensed approval from the state. The NMLS number, the NMLS system does not grant you a license, it's only the system of record for the state. You need to wait for that license to come to you from the state before you start doing any of those activities, negotiating rates and terms, doing advertisements, putting things out where you're holding yourself out as an originator. And certainly if you're working in different localities and you have an opportunity to work to another state where you're not licensed, that is still unlicensed lending. You may be licensed in your state, but trying to participate or earn money on a referral for a deal in another state, that's also unlicensed lending, and that is also looked at very seriously by the regulators, and don't cross that line. Certainly, staying aware, staying educated, understanding the rules as they come about. The federal regs are going to change time over time. HMDA is going to change in a couple of years, and it's going to affect, and it comes down to the originator level. It can certainly impact your ability to stay in this business for a long time and make this a career. So keeping up to date on what your state codes are, having the right forms, having your education done in advance, not waiting to the last part of the year to get your CE done, and understanding as federal and state laws change that you're up to date and you're in step with what the regs, the laws, the codes are, and you're not doing anything that's going to force you out of the business.
Hey, thanks, Bob. We really appreciate you weighing in on these topics with our attendees. And for any further questions, we encourage you to reach out directly to Bob Niemi at Baker Hostetler. But we want to say thank you for weighing in today. We greatly appreciate it.